Hi guys, in this tutorial we're going to look at rendering your balloon racer, which means making it look photorealistic. In other words, we're going to make it look like it's been taken, but like it's a photograph. On screen, my model doesn't look that professional at all. I can do little things like click on the computer screen at the bottom and change the camera from orthographic, which is a perfect engineering view, into perspective, which is a bit more how we see, and it makes some small changes, but still it doesn't look like it's a real product. It looks like it's a 3D computer-aided design. So what I'm going to do is come up to Model and click on the Render menu. That's job one. This then takes us into this studio environment. Now, this might look great at the beginning. It might look rubbish at the beginning. It just depends what your settings are. Job one. I can still see a sketch in here, so I'm going to turn all my sketches off with the light bulb on the left-hand side, and you could do the same with construction and origin if they are also on. Next thing, I am going to start giving my different materials, my different bodies, a color or a material texture. The way that I do that, I'll select the body, I'm going to right-click and click on Appearance. If you don't see this big menu, it's probably just been minimized. You can expand it by clicking the plus symbol up here. And what you'll find is if you scroll down, there's a whole host of material options. Now remember, with 3D printing ours, why is this not dragging down? I can't make it any bigger. Right, it doesn't matter. There's a whole list of materials that we can use. We're 3D printing ours, so ours is going to be made of plastic, which is this menu here. And we are using PLA, but I don't think that's an option in this. However, ABS is similar. There's white, which I'll drag and drop on, and it makes my car white as a starting point. However, we can customize this color, and we can do it by double-clicking, and then we can give it any color that we'd like. We have a fairly wide range of colors for 3D printing, but you may not really, we'll have to see. I'll try and match the color of your 3D printing to the color that you choose here, but it may not be perfect. I'll have to pick the closest color that we have. But pick a color that you think's pretty cool. For the body, press done. And at the moment, the name is still white. So my advice would be, let's just see if we can rename it here. Orange, yellow, I don't know. Anyway, you get the idea. Give it a name so you know you've customized it. Next job, the wheels. So I'm going to select these. I held shift. I clicked on the first body and then held shift to select them all. So I can do it at the same time. I'm going to come on this menu and let's look again for, maybe let's look for a textured plastic. Let's drag and drop black onto here. Now black is too dark, so let's change that maybe to a grey. But what's quite interesting here is if I zoom in now, you'll see that the difference is this one was a textured surface, and you can see that there are lumps and bumps in here, and this one was a smooth surface. So our 3D printing will have a bit of a texture. We could come back onto this and have another go with textured. Drag that on now, and then edit this one to be that orangey color. And you can see that that texture now shows. But that's really up to you. You can spend a long time experimenting with these to get them how you'd like. But I'm fairly satisfied with that in terms of the color. The model, I don't think is great. And the scene is not great either, but the colors are fine. They'll do the job. Right, so I've rotated into a view that I quite like. Let's just check the camera settings on perspective. They are lovely. Right, now what we need to do is change the scene, which is, so appearance we've done here, but now we're going to move across to the scene settings. The scene is what's happening around this. Now, first thing that you might want to do is click on Environment Library and choose an environment. Now, it is possible to download other environments, for example, this field. You can download it. It normally doesn't take long. And once it's downloaded, double click on it. And what will happen is it will change the surrounding to match what it would be like in a field. However, the background is still gray. That's okay. That's because in the settings menu, I have the background as a solid color, but I could change this to environment. And you can see here, I'm now in a field. And I can zoom in, zoom out. I can rotate to change the view. So you can see that this is it's not ideal, but you could experiment with this. What you can then do is things like click on position up here, and you can change where this thing is. So you could experiment like that if you wanted. So changing the position of our car like so. So I realise this looks ludicrous, but the point is I'm just sort of showing you different options that you have available. It is possible on the scene settings to put your own image in as a background. You'll have to watch another YouTube tutorial on that. I'm not going to go into that because it's a bit too advanced. But for this, my strongest advice is probably just go with something like soft light or cool light. And it puts it in a studio environment. And I would suggest just having a solid color background, which is white, like that. Now, we're then going to flatten the ground and we're going to put reflections on, so we can see the reflections down here. If you look carefully on the screen, you can change how visible those reflections are. But that's something that you can experiment with again on your own. We could change the focal length, which basically is to what extent is our model in perspective. Exposure affects how much light we can see. And then at the top, we've got brightness as well, which is a very sensitive controller. So you need to be careful when you're moving your mouse, but you can change the light settings. So in summary, my preference personally is a white background. I like having reflections on. You can experiment with the environment library. That's completely up to you. You're the designer. But have a play. Don't be afraid to experiment. So first thing we've done here is we've played with the appearance and we've given each of our bodies an appearance. Next thing we've done is we've come onto scene settings and we've experimented with the scene. That's much better. Now, to get a quick idea, this still isn't photorealistic, but to get a quick idea of how this would look, I can do an in-canvas render by pressing the play button. What this starts to do is calculate how realistic this image might be, and it gives you a little preview of that. Now, this picture will get clearer and clearer and clearer, but it's basically still just a preview. It's using quite a lot of processing power to do this, but it's a preview, it's thinking about it, it's generating the image, and it will get better and better and better with time. That's not actually that bad. That's looking pretty good, no? But there's one more thing I want to do before we create a photo render, so I'm going to stop that preview, and it's adding a decal. A decal is like a sticker. First thing I need to do then is download an image. So let's just come onto Google and type in F1 decal. And I need one with a transparent background. So let's come on to Images, Settings, Advanced Search. And we're only going to search for images that are transparent. I have a transparent background. Let's do an advanced search. Now, all of these images have a transparent background. So let's select this F1 logo. And we're going to need to right-click and download it. Right-click, Save Image As. Let's just add that onto my desktop. Right, let's come back into Fusion. So what I can do now is a decal is basically, how do I describe? It's like a sticker that you put onto a surface. So that's the surface I wanted to go on. Let's select the image, which is now my desktop. And now what we can do is scale it with this button. We can rotate it with these buttons. We can move it with the arrows. Yep, so there's one decal, and let's look for another. What should we go for? Let's go for Mercedes. Let's save this one. What you can do, by the way, is once you've saved this image, I'm going to come onto my desktop. I'm going to trim it, just to crop it a little bit, get rid of the image at the bottom, the writing at the bottom. Let's close that again. Let's come into Fusion now. Now, on a curved surface, you might have some problems, but let's experiment and see. Sometimes you might be able to work around the problems. Let's rotate that. 180 degrees, let's scale it up in the corner. Oh, it's not doing a bad job. And let's move that 5 millimeters higher. Lovely. Press Enter. Right, cool. Let's do an in-canvas preview, see how it looks. And that's not bad at all. But remember, this is just an in-canvas preview. This isn't the real thing. I'm happy with it. I want to create the real thing. Right, let's do it. You do that with this render option, and you press render. Right, because it requires a lot of processing power, your computers aren't very good. So what we do is we're going to send this file to Autodesk, the company who makes the software, and they're going to do it for you, and then they're going to send it back. So we're going to change the image size to 1200. We're going to change cloud render, final render. Let's just check everything else. Yeah, that's all good. Yeah, 1200 is all right. Then we'll press render. What's going to happen is it's going to send this file, this information off to Autodesk, and they're going to send it back to you when it's ready. But the beautiful thing about this is that we can do lots of different renders, all different views. We can just do the same process. And you're not exerting any effort. You're just waiting for the renders to be done for you. And when you come back to this, you should have a nice selection of images. So get creative, get some cool angles. You might want to experiment in the meantime with your lighting settings. Adding shadows, changing the position of the shadows. For example, coming on position now, and I could change where the light is. Let's try and get surfaces shinier, darker, cast shadows in interesting ways. Make it more moody. Okay, and I'm going to just pause this video and I'll come back to it in a moment. It doesn't take too long normally for these to appear. While you are waiting for them to appear, do what I was doing and just start experimenting, changing the angles, and I'll resume this video when they have been completed. Right guys, sorry, I almost forgot to come back to this. Right, let's look at our renderings. So we can double click them. It might take a minute because they're quite big files. Open them up, we can zoom in if we'd like. So that's looking pretty good, ready to download anyway. This is the download button. And my advice would be to enable the transparent background and then to download as a PNG. Download those onto your desktop or wherever you'd like. It will prompt you into where on your laptop you want to create these. So let's call these balloon racers. Save it into there. Let's just call it 1. Do that for all your renderings. You should have a nice selection of them. You can then use those for your display, for your presentation. So I hope you found that useful. It's quite a fun process trying to make them look like photographs. Obviously, it is still a 3D design, so there's only so far you can go, but it is quite fun trying to make it realistic. Right, guys, have fun and email me if you need anything.